Hey guys, here today showing you how to replace the front brake pads and rotors on your 2005 Ford Freestyle. I believe this is considered the first generation Freestyle. Don't quote me on that, I'm not entirely sure, but I think they made these from 04 on up to 09 or 08. But regardless of the fact, this is a 05 and it is all-wheel drive limited model. So obviously you want to jack the car up, get it on jack stands, and take the wheel off. The wheel lug nuts are 19 millimeters, in case you need to know that. You won't need a big selection of tools for this job. It's fairly straightforward as far as brake jobs are concerned. The only tool you may need to go out and buy that you might not have yet is a caliper. A caliper compression tool to push the piston back in which case I use one of these. As you've probably seen in my other videos, my favorite tool. They do make ones like these that are that have I guess you can hold them like a pistol grip where you can squeeze them, and it actually does that on its own, but I like these and I've been using them for some time now. The other tool you may not have is a T40 Torx bit. You'll need that to remove the retaining bolt that holds on the rotor, which you can probably see is right about there where I'm pointing at. You need to be able to remove that. You'll probably need a hammer of some sort as well in order to remove the rotor in case it's stuck. You may want to put some WD-40 or PB Blaster on the center portion of the hub here around the circle there to enable you to break the rotor free. In my past experience, just hitting it with a hammer on the face of it usually breaks it free, but we'll see here today if that's the case or not. Then you'll just need a 13 millimeter for the caliper bolts and a 15 millimeter for the caliper bracket. So the first thing you want to do is to loosen up the T30 Torx, which is this bolt here. I'm sorry if the lighting gets a little messed up, but there's a T30 Torx that's right here. And go on ahead and loosen that up first. You go ahead and remove that all the way. Just go ahead and set that down to the side. You will be reusing that, so just set it down. And then you can go on ahead and go inside. And I like to actually turn the wheel to the right. Well, if you're working on the left side, turn the wheel to the left. If you're working on the right side, turn the wheel all the way to the right. That way it's easier to get to the caliper bolts and the caliper bracket bolts. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, now that we got it turned to the side here, next thing you want to do is to remove the two 13 millimeter bolts that are holding on the caliper. There's one here. Excuse me, the camera's being odd. There's one bolt here and one bolt here. I've already loosened them up. I'm just going to undo them by hand. Okay, so I would like to point out that taking the two bolts out and trying to pull the caliper off is probably going to be a little difficult at first, especially if you haven't done Ford brakes. But there are two little retaining, nipples on here that kind of hold the caliper or hold the pads into the caliper. So if you find that you're trying to pull it off is not working, what you will need to do is get your screwdriver, and the caliper now will be in place on here like this, like so. But you can actually take your flathead screwdriver and you'll stick it right in between here where there's a little bit of space. You'll see the brake pad and there'll be a space in the rotor here. I'm sorry, there'll be a little space right here where you can just stick your screwdriver in and kind of pry towards you and pry towards the car, and that prying will be pushing in the piston caliper enough to where you can take the caliper off. I'm sorry I can't really explain it much better than that, but another way people like to do it is actually to grab onto the back of the caliper and pull it towards them as hard as they can to try and get the pistons to compress on the inside. That way there's enough room to take the caliper off. So yeah, you'll just have to play with it a little bit. I apologize, I can't explain it better than that, but it is what it is. So you can go ahead and remove the pads now and just set them down. So after you've got the caliper off, you want to go on ahead and compress the pistons back into the caliper by using the tool here. Pretty much just take and slide the old pad right into the back of the caliper, and then you'll place the compression tool right inside of the caliper, and then you go ahead and turn it until you can push the pistons back in. I'll show you what it looks like here. Pretty much it'll look something like this here. You've got the old pad right here, and the tool is pressing in on the pad to push the pistons back in, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so after you've got the pistons compressed back in, you can go on ahead and remove the caliper bracket now. That's held on by two 15mm bolts right here in the back. It's ideal to use a breaker bar if you have one in order to break those loose. I use a little bar like this, breaker bar, and then a 15mm to go ahead and take those off. After you break them loose, you go ahead and just use a ratchet. Take them out the rest of the way. Be careful when you pull out the bolts for the caliper bracket, because the steering stop here will also be in your way. So make sure you hold it. You're gonna have to hold both the caliper bracket and the steering brace when you pull out this last bolt. Set them both down on the side, pull the caliper bracket off, set it down to the side. Okay, so now you'll have the rotor here. As I said, may be a little difficult to get off. Usually what I like to do is take and hit it on the face of the hammer where you pulled the screw out. I like to hit it on the face of that to go ahead and break it loose. I recommend putting the lug nuts back on so that way you don't damage the heads of the thread where you'll be hitting it at, and it should break free. Just like that, you see it slides right off. You may find other ways of people trying to tell you to move stuck rotors, but honestly this is the best way. Few good whacks. Don't hit it from the back of the rotor, because then you'll risk damaging the wheel bearing, because you're torquing the wheel bearing in an angle it doesn't need to be. So after you hit it, you'll simply go ahead and pull off the old rotor, set the rotor down, and go ahead and get your new rotor. Make sure that you spray it off with brake cleaner before you install it, and you can go ahead and slide it back into place, and then use the T40 screw to screw it into place. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that now, put it on. So you're going to go ahead and slide your rotor back into place. Make sure that you pay attention to the holes on the rotor, because you need to have one of the holes line up to the retaining bolt screw. So just pay attention to that. Once you got it in place, you can go on ahead and put your T40 Torx screw back in. And go on ahead and tighten it up. You can just go hand tight on this. No need to go too crazy. Okay, and after you've done that, you can go on ahead and reinstall the caliper bracket and the steering stop. Or actually, before you do that, I apologize. Inside the caliper bracket here, where the bolts that hold on the caliper, you'll notice that these pins slide. You actually can just pull them straight out, just like so. And then you want to go on ahead and get a rag and wipe off all the old grease that's on there. And then you can go on ahead and get yourself some nice, I use multi-purpose grease. It's red. It's a high temperature grease, heavy duty grease. You want to go on ahead and grit some of that so that you can put new grease on these. You can go ahead and just add a generous amount on there, and then once you've done that, you go on ahead and just slide them right back into the caliper here, just like so. And you can go on ahead and reinstall the bracket back onto the knuckle. Again, don't forget to also hold up the steering stop and thread the bolt through both of them at the same time. If you need you may need an extra hand to do this, but it should be okay for you to do. So after you got both these bolts in here, you can go on ahead and tighten them up. Again, just using the breaker bar, get it down to a nice torque. I don't know the exact torque specs, but I generally, with all these, I kind of just pull up on them like I was going to do lug nuts. Just make sure they're nice and snug, and that should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these back up. In case you forget the orientation of the steering stop here, and you notice it comes to a point on the end. The point will be facing towards the rear of the car, or the point will be pointing into the bottom of the car, like so, like that. So you can't actually put it backwards where the point is facing the wrong direction, but it goes facing the car up underneath the car. So I'll go ahead and tighten these back up. Like so. Now all you would need to do is to install your new pads and hardware. If your car does not come with, or if your pads that you bought does not come with new brake hardware, like the little brackets that hold the pads in, make sure you just go ahead and spray off your old ones with brake cleaner if you have it, and just wipe them down as best you can. And then go on ahead and install your new pads onto your new hardware, or if you're using your old hardware, just stick the old hardware back in and stick the new pads in. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. Like so. And there you have, the new pads are in. Now you can go on ahead and take the caliper and slide it back on top of the pads and put the two 13mm bolts back into place. Then you can go on ahead and tighten up the 13mm bolts, just the same as you did the retaining bolt for the rotor. Just get them nice and snug. And then you'll want to go back inside and pump. Don't start the car, but go back inside and pump the brakes until you feel the pedal gets firm. After that, you can go on ahead and move to the other side as you need. I'm not going to show how to do the other side in this video because obviously it's the same procedure for both sides. Again, I apologize if this video was kind of rushed. I kind of do need to get this car back to its customer, and I apologize if the lighting was kind of bad or whatnot, but nonetheless, you get the idea of how to do it. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comments section below. If this is your first time to the channel, thanks for coming and stopping by, and definitely hit the subscribe button on your way out if you would like to see more car repair content. I do work on all kinds of cars, all makes and models, motorcycles, anything pretty much with an engine on it. So yeah, just feel free to ask me any questions you guys may have. As again, I appreciate you guys tuning in for the video, and I'll see you guys next time.